Hey y'all, Coach in the Fight here. Got the whole family with me. They sleep. Got Chris here now.
Hey y'all.
And in today's video, we're going to be talking on the keys of Enoch. Now, this is actually more Christians' books now that I think about it than mine. Right, Chris?
Yeah, I've done a little bit of work with the keys of Enoch, maybe just doing some audio recordings.
So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to play a few of the videos that we've done. We've done at least 3 that I've found so far related to the keys of Enoch. We're going to play the first one first. It's from the first chapter of the keys of Enoch. Now, the keys of Enoch is, what is it? Can you show them that page right there? Show them that, not that. The PDF, can you show them the, you can show them this. Are they seeing this now?
It should be. Let me check. But, so, these are...
Go ahead and read what that says.
The Book of Knowledge, the Keys of Enoch. A teaching given on 7 levels to be read and visualized in preparation for the brotherhood of light, to be delivered for the people, for the quickening of the people of light.
All right, you want to read it a little slower? Let's take it a little slower. Write down what he's saying.
The Book of Knowledge, the Keys of Enoch.
Put that microphone up top if you don't mind. So now, the Book of Knowledge, the Keys of Enoch. Now, when you look in the introduction and the prologue of this book, what you find is a person named Hermas, J.J. Hermas, who had a visitation with the Ophanim, in particular Enoch, who explained the information that he received in this book to him on a higher level, similar to the way Enoch got the information, 6,000 years ago.
Right. Was this one of the books that they used, the Urim and the Thummim?
No, actually not. The breastplate books, no, this was not. This one is different. Matter of fact, can you look at the introduction part? Yeah, scroll down to the prologue.
Here's the prologue here.
Okay. You haven't really, and I haven't really went through it to find the particular part that it explains how he got this information. It's somewhere in there. I've read it. And what happened was, it wasn't a Urim and a Thummim book, but he, during the Jubilee year, 1970 something, 54 something, actually had, I want to say, a visitation. He was
like in a vision.
Yeah, like a vision, like a more than that. The thing of, if it was an ophanation, you know what an ophanation is?
I think I can make an educated guess based on the words, but
Okay, go ahead.
so it'll be something like when an Ophanim either appears to him where he can physically see them or just hear them, but it's something when an Ophanim makes themselves appear to him.
Yeah. No, it's not so much an appearance, because we're not expected to draw pictures of stuff.
Right.
It's a knowledge, it's a knowing, it's a education. Similar to Enoch, like we said, Enoch didn't come back with a bunch of pictures of what he saw. he came back with words of visual to make us visualize it. And so that's what the Ophir nations are. They're not visual. They're, I don't know what the other word. But what the point that I was trying to get to is this is the same way that we invented a clock.
Right.
It's the same thing. It was the same period of time throughout the year. You know, some make a connection that way with the star alignments, but it's the angelic brotherhoods, angels, who are communicating with humans and having them to impart information from the angels. The thing about it, this goes on all the time. Every time, well, not every time, most of the time when you have so-called good ideas, or you come up with things that, you know, you've never thought of before, or anybody for that matter, or inventions, the problem is we don't give credit where credit's due. And people say stuff like, oh, it just came to me, or I thunk of it, or something told me. Well, do you know how, you know, difficult it was to get that information down to your human brain so that you could understand it? Did you understand how difficult that was? Go back to elementary school and they was trying to make you understand 2 + 2. And here they are trying to get you to understand the secrets to the universe. You know what I mean? Right. Or how to invent a timepiece, how to make a timepiece mark time to infinity. I mean, you could keep stacking those clocks up together and you could count to infinity.
Right. From one end of the universe to the other.
Yeah, it take 100 years to make one click of the clock. Well, that's Ophination. Nobody's really that smart to do that. I know I'm not. You know, but it happened. And so similar to this book here, it's the brotherhood. Like go back to what we was trying to see up there first. That little part you was reading. What does it say?
A teaching given on 7 levels to be read and visualized in preparation for...
Hold on, we said we was taking it slow.
Oh, yeah.
It said a teaching given on 7 levels. Now, I can't say I understand that part. I've read the book. I read it all, but I'd have to... I said I was going to read it again. And maybe this time I'll catch these 7 levels. But what did it say?
To be read and visualized.
To be read and visualized. Now, to be read. Now, that's important, you know, because when I read that, that gives me, go ahead, next. What does it say next?
In preparation for the brotherhood of light.
In preparation. Now, wait. Now, look back at that word visualized. That's kind of what we was talking about, what you was talking about earlier about, you know, being able to see something or something like that.
Right.
But he's saying, but did he say read? What did he say? Read and visualize? What did he say?
To be read and visualized.
Read and visualized. Now, so to kind of go together, I guess is the thing. Hey, Stay, come on in and say hi.
Good morning.
Hey.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mom.
Hi, everyone.
So, we're talking about the keys of Enoch.
Okay.
And we're just getting started. But anyways, we're right here at the start. Go ahead, Chris. What did it say?
To be delivered for the quickening of the people of light.
The people of light. Now, this book goes into this, who this is, the people of light versus the people of dark. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole book. We are going to play a video here. I think we got it locked and loaded. But what he's talking about, the people of light are those who are sent back to earth in this time in order to help humanity to progress to the better side. while you have the people of the dark who are sent back for the opposite purpose. They have the mission of leading humanity astray. All right, what else to say? And so he says for the quickening of the people of the light. What does that mean, Stay? Quickening.
I don't really know. I mean, I can just say what, I believe that it means, but.
What you believe it means?
I guess to just jumpstart them, to get them ready.
Get them ready. All right, sounds good to me. What does it say next, Chris?
That's the last of that.
All right. So now, let's go ahead and check comments before we play this video. You want to pass your mom your phone if you had the comments up already? And you can tell us the title of the video. You want my glasses? Here.
It's just one comment. It says, I'm interested.
Who said that?
Doll.
Hey, doll, how's it going?
Doll MCK.
Yeah, that's a long time viewer. There's a lot of people interested in the keys of Enoch, and we drew lots on what we would talk about today during today. So we're gonna play this video.
She said in the 64th key.
Oh,
64th.
Oh, I read it again.
She says, I'm interested in the 64th key.
64. How many keys are there, Chris?
It was 65, right?
65.
So the second to last key.
But now you got to remember that the book only has 55 of the keys. The other 10 keys are in the Bible, right? You remember something like that?
Or there was that one key that had 10 parts to it.
You gotta read the whole book. You gotta read it. Yeah. Okay. So you're saying it's the second to the last one,
right?
All right. So how long is this video? Let's play. Okay. Hold on. Trying to figure out how to do this. how to share the 64th key with them. I'll tell you what. Let's come back to it. I'll figure out something after the break. What is next? Any more? That was the only comment. Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's run this video and we'll come back with something on the keys on the 64th key. Have to figure out which one that is. All right. So what's the name of the video, Chris?
We live in an open-ended universe. Our Father is the center of the universe.
All right. Now, what this is talking about is how our Father in heaven, hallowed be his name, is way bigger than we always thought he was. Than anything we've ever thought. We've already knew that we couldn't wrap our human brains around his hugeness. But now we're about to find out how small we are compared to who he is, and find out that no, this ain't even the only universe. There's like millions of universes.
Right.
And he's the father of all of them. So let's go ahead and run this. Hey y'all, Coach Inthefight here, starting a long anticipated series on the keys of Enoch. Yep, that's right. We're about to look through this book, starting in chapter 1. Prayerfully, we're going to make our way all the way to the end of this book, expounding on many of these verses. This is called the Book of Knowledge, the Keys of Enoch. And in it, over the course of time, we should learn exactly what this phrase is talking about here. Where it says this is a teaching on 7 levels to be read and visualized in preparation for the brothers of light. Yeah, we're going to find out exactly who these brothers of light are. You may be actually hearing about them in the news. Thing is, since we don't know exactly who these beings are, there are many people who are portraying them as aliens or other things like that. This is why this book is important. It's because it breaks down who exactly these beings are and tells us what they're going to do here when they come. They're not aliens at all, these brothers of light. They're actually who we recognize as angels. The thing about this book is we'll no longer generalize everything in the spirit world as an angel or as an Elohim, because it gives specific names and tasks and jobs for these individuals up there. So we'll learn to recognize the Ophanim, the thrones, who Enoch was, and other spiritual beings over the course of this book. Then it says right there, this book is to be delivered by the quickening of the people of light. These individuals too will be identified who exactly they are. These are people, not angelic figures or aliens or anything like that. We'll find out who they are and why they were chosen to deliver this information, and why it's so important that they deliver it in nowadays and now times. Although I'm going to try to hit most of the verses in the book, I'm going to ignore many of the pictures, the illustrations in the book. They seem to kind of be an afterthought, just added to the book. But some of them will appear to be useful, so we'll touch on them as we go. Now, we already posted a video where we did a read-along of the introduction of this book. You can actually see many of the read-alongs that we've done. We've made it all the way up to the second part of the book, now that Christian is helping to edit the documents before we let Voice Girl read them. They sound much better now. So after this video, you can go over and check out the introduction to this book. It has a vast wealth of knowledge about what this book is about. We're going to come all the way down to the beginning of the first series. There's actually 3 series in the book. The first one says it's the biocomputer keys to our consciousness time zone revealed to me by master control messengers, Metatron and Ophanim, Enoch. So what it's saying here is that Enoch is one of these Ophanim. And we find out in this book who the Ophanim are. They are the spirit beings who have been the guides over time. We find out that anybody who has been a prophet in the Bible or getting their prophetic information from these beings who we have always called angels, but we'll find out that they are actually the class of angel called the Ophanim. Anytime you get any type of divinely inspired information, even in modern times, that's who's actually talking to you, these Ophanim. And it could very well be Enoch himself. Now, here in chapter 1, it covers 3 different parts. They're kind of intertwined there. This is the only chapter of the book that does this, where it combines 3 different keys. So it kind of throws the chapters off. When we start chapter 2, we'll actually be looking in key number 4. But anyway, we see that key number 1, let me go ahead and read these. It says, we live in a many and one universe. And that's going to be covered here, why it's important for us to understand these multiple universes that we live in, and the results if we don't recognize that we live in a multiple universe. Key number 2 says, the creative mind as the center of this universe is known as Lord, King, and Redeemer. So this right here is talking about our individual universe and who it is that's governing this particular universe. It says here, Lord, King, Redeemer, but you would also include our Messiah. Key number 3 is that the creations which survive are creations which desire that the species gather life and light into the image and similitude of the higher evolution, which is the living universe. Now, this we've always heard, and that's what we're going to find out over the course of this book, is that this is really no new information, or not much new information, I should say. It seems new because of how it is actually defining many of these terms. We've never really seen these things defined in such detail. So it's going to be new information, but we can go back and find references to everything that's said in the Old Testament and in the New Testament and even in the Third Testament. This right here, who is actually talking about at first glance would appear to be the 144,000, as well as the multitude that no man can number, but it's giving us details on why that particular group will survive the apocalypse and the other events that's coming on into the world. So let's go ahead and get into verse 1, which is talking about how we live in an open-ended universe. Now, this, to me, was actually a new thing. Turns out many of the scientists have been trying to tell us this for a long time, that we live in a multi-universe, that this is not the only universe. You hear them, talking about Big Bang and the creation of this universe. As an aside note, that is a biblical thing. The Big Bang actually did happen. You read about it in 2nd Enoch. You hear all about it. That's important to this discussion because a lot of these principles which sound new only do so because there's individuals that's withholding this information from us, especially the scientists. They're reading this book in Second Enoch and even First Enoch, and they're gathering this scientific knowledge, but instead of sharing it with us like I'm doing here, where I'm just showing you the source, they act like they came up with the ideas on their own, and they pursued mathematics and science to actually prove their so-called theories or their hypothesis. But it's not that at all. They're actually getting, just like they got the Big Bang, they got it out of a book. Second Enoch describes it in detail, even names who it was that was caused to come apart as a Big Bang, so to speak, and how it is that this particular universe was created. Now, verse 2 goes on to tell us why it is that we recognize that we live in this open-ended universe, this multi-universe, because once we realize that we live in a multiple universe, then you got to understand that there is a higher being here. As long as we can focus in as if this is the only universe, we can act like, or some people can act like it was created randomly. But when you look at how these universes are in a crystalline structure, which means that just like we has the Mazzaroth here, or those 12 signs in the sky, each one of these universes will have an earth, and they will have that same pattern in the sky to go by. And when you look at it from that aspect, there's no way to deny a higher being, a higher mind, as it's described here, as the creator of all things. We see that in verse 3, where it says this requires a higher mind. Like I said, we read in this book that these universes are crystalline, which means they're the same. They would look to be the same. Each one would have a earth, each one would have a sun, and each one of them would have a moon, and each one of them would go through these same life cycles of human history, the same as we did. One thing that comes to mind as I think on this is how they call them dust worlds, are kind of like breeding ground for spirits, where we come down here and we learn different precepts and different principles here in the flesh, where time is slowed down, so that when we go off to those higher mansions, we already have these life lessons that we learned here on this planet. We see it there in verse 4, it says that this higher mind is seen as Adonai, King, Melech, Redeemer, or Messiah. And this is who we've always recognized as our Father, as our Creator. But what we're learning here is that each one of these universes has this Creator spirit. And we're going to find out in this book, maybe even in this chapter, how this works like this. It's like once this universe was spoken into existence, then we had to have these governing spirits who we've always recognized as Elohim, guiding us and leading us through our spiritual evolution, again, preparing us for these higher mansions. Verse 5 is talking about how once we recognize that we live in this multiple universe, that we can then start to recognize this living mind. We can recognize his living mind, the Father, the Most High, after we recognize our living mind. So this is all part of spiritual evolution. All right, guys, I said I'm going to keep these videos short. So I'm going to go ahead and end it here, and we'll pick up in verse 6 on the next lesson. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you have that bell notification pushed so you can see when these classes come out. If you want to read ahead, you can check the description for some links that we have to the book. And you could also find a read along that we've done for this whole chapter, so you can actually listen to this entire chapter as you wait for the next part of this lesson to come out. And in the meantime, y'all pray for me, and I'll do the same for you. And shalom. I don't know about that read along. Maybe a little bit more difficult to find that. Y'all feeding the sheep?
They just came back from the field.
There you go, some wheat. All right, so now we just finished this book, this video. Now, if you don't mind, Chris, let's jump over to this document, and let me get them started back. We're going to look for the word, or the letter, or character, 64. All right, blow. Let me blow them up so they can see it. And what we're going to do is we're going to read here about the 64th key. Now, since we talked last, all I had a chance to do was to peruse this. I basically went down to see how many out of 87 was actually related.
Right.
And we need to put us a screw right here or something. Alright. So, let's go down it and we'll let you read it. And we'll talk about it. Now, I'll tell you what we'll do. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of empty space. So you just read the sentence and then you can just go on and start looking for the next one. It'll say something like 64 keys. It'll say 64 scrolls, something like that. The other bulk of it will be just the 64th verse.
Right.
So you'll just skip those. So go ahead and read. Just start up there at the beginning of that paragraph. And let's see what it says.
I was told to compose a scroll on parchment from the divine scroll of light that was coded into me. And this scroll is the 64 keys of Enoch, explaining how the 7 seals of the book of Revelation will be broken as all measures of science from the biophysical to the astrophysical are attuned to a new spiritual revelation in the name of the Aya Esher Aya.
All right. So this whole book, it sounds like, we can go to the next one, is part of the 64 keys, is what it's saying.
Right.
So you have the 63 and then you have the 64. What we're going to find out is that the 64th key is unique. All right, let's read it now.
These are the 64 keys that were shown to me by Enoch and Metatron to unite the nations for the coming of Melchizedek brotherhood and to make ready the final preparation for the descent of the 144,000 ascended masters.
Okay, so here we got Melchizedek, who is the priest of the Most High. He came with the bread and the wine there to Abraham, but it looks here like he's also coming with the 144,000 in Christ.
Right.
And what did it say the keys of Enoch was doing? Helping explain it or shining light on it? Because that's what it's doing.
Getting them prepared.
Getting them prepared. Okay, like we said in the other one, what was that word Stacy helped us with?
Quickening.
Quickening, yeah. All right, go ahead. What's the next one?
And with that vision, I was returned to the world to write the words of the 64 keys of light, set forth in this book of knowledge, delivered unto me in this consciousness time zone by the Ophanim Enoch and by Metatron, to be vouchsafed unto the saints and delivered to the children of light, in the name of Yodeh Vohe.
All right, yeah, just take your time, but so like we was talking about earlier, this is not a Urim and a Thummim book because of how he got the information. He went through a different process. Not saying either one of them is better than the other. They're just different. They're different processes. A Urim and a Thummim book, and I think I may have coined that phrase, but is a book where someone has a breastplate, the ephod, the crystals, and they know how to use these crystals, and they're able to communicate with the spirit world, with our, the Ophanim, using the crystals.
Right.
Well, that's how the sealed portion was written. You had the guy who wrote them. It was 2 of them. It tells you right there in the introduction of the book how they had the breastplate, and they used the breastplate to interview Enoch. So they're actually doing the same thing, getting oath for nations, except one is active. One has a breastplate, and you can imagine there's days when he say, I don't know if I feel up to it today. We might skip and wait till tomorrow before we have our meeting and break out our breastplate and interview Enoch.
Right.
Well, the other doesn't really have that option. They're going to wake you up when they ready.
Right.
And so, I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying one is better or anything. They're just different. All right, so what's next?
There is now occurring the fulfillment of ancient spiritual and scientific prophecy through the 64 keys of Enoch. The revelation breaking the 7 seals of the book of Revelation, as well as explaining the brotherhoods of light to work with the members of the human race who can accept the promise of new life in a myriad of other universes.
Yeah, talking about the brother light now, like this book is really deep because notice it's saying that those who can't accept it, there's those who can't accept it. There's those who are not mentally prepared for the next level, the spiritual jump. These are the children of the dark. They don't get to go over. And so that's what the book is pretty much talking about. But go back. It was a part before that. I'm sorry. Oh, you lost your place? There is now occurring the fulfillment of ancient spiritual and scientific prophecy through the 64 keys of Enoch, the revelation breaking the 7 seals. So, yeah, this is a revelation breaking the 7 seals on a scientific level. That's the unique thing about this book, and that's why a lot of people will struggle who try to read this book, and don't feel ashamed, because the book is it's more science than anything else. It's I want to say the author, I can't pronounce all of his titles, but he had to have a certain level of understanding just to be able to write the book, just to be able to write the book.
Right.
Just to be able to write the book. And I can't remember what kind of some type of physicist, but anyway, when it says that it's breaking down the 7 seals, it actually talks about what happens to us on a molecular level.
Right.
And how the sun changes our DNA. And we're actually going to touch on this in this. Let's go to the next one. It's actually going to touch on that in these 64, this little class that we're doing with, that we're talking about 64. We're actually going to talk about DNA too. What's the next one? And go ahead.
Therefore, the codes for the 64 key grid are within the Deca-Delta pattern, the conic section of light.
All right. So now, what is that saying? This one is actually going to try to show you a picture. It says the Deca-Delta system. Go ahead to the next one. This book will bog you down into the weeds. Now, but read that one.
On each face of the divine grid of the Deca-Delta manifold, there are 64 cells which show the harmonics that are used in divining life upon the waters of creation.
64 cells which show the harmonies. 64 cells which shows the harmonies that are used in divining life. Okay, let's go to the next one.
The corresponding lower 3 faces compose the 64 codes of DNA RNA into the human electrochemical membrane.
64 codes of DNA RNA into the human electrochemical membrane. All right, let's go to the next one. So, it may take them a while. Are you ready? Because some of these are going to take you a while to find the next one. All right, let's read it.
Whereas the third face is the distribution of the divine letters, so as to form a vibratory grid out of the 64 arrangements of the divine letters.
64 arrangements of divine letters. 64 arrangements of divine letters. And they talk about how DNA, well, it's talking about DNA, but go ahead. What's the next one?
Just as the 64 keys of Enoch came out of a fiery scroll, so as the 64 structures of DNA RNA biosynthesis came out of a polarization of divine light.
64 structures of DNA and RNA biosynthesis. Okay, go to the next one. somehow it's making a connection between, well, her DNA. And we already explained how, well, we already talked about how this book explains how the sun and its flares and its flash is going to change our DNA. And so if we're making a connection here, you have this book which is supposed to shine light or quicken the spirits of those children of the light, and then explaining to them how the sun is going to change their DNA with a book coded in 64. Let's go to the next one.
Through the proper light threshold, the image and similitude.
You read that one? Stop right. Don't skip any.
Moreover, the proper combination of color and sound will establish a healthy resonance grid within the hydrogen matrix of light, allowing the human expression of DNA RNA to be properly balanced with the 64 light letter cells using the divine name.
Human expression of DNA RNA to be properly balanced with the 64 letter cells using the divine name. 64 letter cells using the divine name. All right, read the next one.
Through the proper light threshold, the image and similitude of the divine grid, the Adam-Cadman expression, are thus balanced with the 64 sacred letter grid of DNA RNA.
And now it's talking about the Adam-Cadman, which is the blueprint for all of humanity. Like we talked about in that video earlier, how there are multiple universes, and you can imagine not all of these universes have people that look like us. Well, each one of them has their own Adam-Cadman. Each one of them has an atom, and all of the humans or all of the people that come after them will follow that same blueprint, whether they got 3 years or not. What's the next one?
There are 64 possible arrangements of 3 nucleotides, and many amino acids are specified by more than one triplet.
All right, let's keep going because it's jumps. You have the 64 codes, the 64 letters, the 64 keys. And our DNA has 64 arrangements. So she says, or Doll says that you're interested in the 64th key. Well, it doesn't actually say which one is the 64th key, or does it?
Right.
Right. Matter of fact, what number is it? That's back to number 1.
Yes, sir.
So we made it through all of them.
Right.
Yeah. Read that one again.
And this scroll is the 64 keys of Enoch, explaining how the 7 scrolls seals of the book of Revelation will be broken as all measures of science, from the biophysical to the astrophysical, are attuned to a new spiritual revelation in the name of Aya, Esher, Aya, I am that I am.
All right. So we'll check that in the comments section before we get ready to go to the next video. And matter of fact, get it locked and loaded, Chris. You can tell us the name of it. I'll jump down here. Let's see. Mac. A lot of people are putting a racial spin on it, as they are also called the brothers of white light, such a disservice to humanity. Yeah. Yeah. Great White Brotherhood. Yeah, that's what it's called. The Great White Brotherhood. And yeah, there's those that's trying to put a racial spin on it. But they are no different than those who try to put a racial spin on salvation too, and say that, that the opposite is true, whereas but no, it's not racial at all. But you say, well, what is the racial element? The sun. Somehow the sun will interact with the melanin in our skin.
Right. And I guess through our skin color it makes it selection.
Yeah. Yes, interesting word. You showed their selection because, yeah. But other than that, salvation has nothing to do with race or anything like that. And for us people that don't have much melanin, I guess we need to cover up. Everybody needs sunglasses on anyway, but it's not about race.
Right.
Further explanation on these matters would be the works of somebody. It's called Spiritual Science. Blessings, Coach. Thank you for your service to humanity. Thank the Father in heaven for allowing me to do anything. Honey Bunny, shalom, shalom. So how many rays of sunlight are there? All of them. How many rays of sunlight? How many bubbles in a bar of soap? All right, what's the next video, Chris? How many rays of sunlight are there? I don't know. Never contemplated the idea.
The next video is, our Messiah, Lord, and Redeemer is the creative mind at the center of our universe.
That's the second class? Oh. Yeah. Okay. Yep. So, see? Okay. All right, so this would be part 2. Read it again.
Our Messiah, Lord, and Redeemer is the creative mind at the center of our universe.
Yeah, so like we were talking about earlier, there's a lot of people who will feel scandalized by the fact that we live in a multi-universe. They like, nah, they really want to think that God is
limited to just this one.
Yeah, to what we can feel, think, and believe, and to think that there's multiple universes kind of blows their mind a little bit. So to bring them back around, we understand who the Messiah is and his role in all of this. In each one of these universes, no matter where they're at, our Father sends the Messiah seed there to save them. No matter what they need saving from or how they need saving, he comes with his word, he comes with his son. And it's basically the same pattern throughout all of these universes. We just happen to live in this one.
Right.
All right, so let's go ahead and get ready to run it, and we'll come back. We'll look some more about the 64th key. I don't know if it's an actual key, but if it is, it has to be the very last chapter, don't it?
Right.
So that's the one I read, ain't it?
Yes.
We'll see. All right, let's run this class. We'll look it up. Go to the fight here. Looking still at chapter 1 of the Keys of Enoch. And in our last video, we looked at the first 5 verses out of chapter 1. We did a bit of an introduction, so you may consider checking out that video after you watch this one. But in this one, we're going to start down here in verse 6. Now, what we're looking at is how that we live in a many and one universe. That's key number 1. Key number 2 says the creative mind as the center of this universe is known as Lord, King, or Redeemer. And then key number 3 is the creations which survive are the creations which desire that the species gather life and light into the image and similitude of the higher evolution, which is the living universe. So those are the keys. And like we said, we're down here in, I think what's could be called the explanation of the keys or the expoundation of the keys, if that's even a word. Anyway, we're going to start here in verse 6 and we're going to see how far we make it. Now, verse 6, it explains why the order of these 3 keys were set this way. It says that the scroll starts off with the open-ended cosmology rather than a closed-ended cosmology. Well, let me just read it. It says, for if it were to say in the first key, the creative mind as the center of this universe is known as Lord, King, and Redeemer, it would put all galaxies into a single universe. So you can imagine that if this were the first key, the first thing that we understood is that our Father, Creator, is at the center of our universe. Well, then we'll start to think that this is the only universe that is in existence. But then look at verse 7. It says, when man starting off with his own three-dimensional concept of God would limit God to that universe. And this is exactly what we've done. We've limited our Father to this universe, which is actually scary in light of the fact that we live in a multi-universe. Because you think about it, if he is the God of this universe only, and we are start to think about other universes, should this God of this universe be concerned about the gods of the other universes? Or are there other gods on the other universes? So that's why it's important for him to order it in this way. Verse 8 is talking about how then we would start arguing the meaning of God or the definition of what God is. And here it is, you see, we're doing that. This is actually going on. And I believe this is because we've always been taught that this is the only universe. And so just what it says here is actually true, how we start to argue the meaning of God and what is God. Verse 9 goes on to define some of the other ways that we try to put our Father in a box. Like, for instance, the Christian theologians would call him Civitas Dei, or the city of God. I believe that's talking about Rome over there. And then we see other ways that we would put our Father in a box if he were the Father of this universe alone. But then you see right there, it says, and I quote, or is God beyond the nature of description, whereby Yahweh means that no man should begin to define what is beyond definition. And so we hear this, even have people saying that we're not supposed to pronounce the name of our Creator at all, or the name of our Father, hallowed be his name. And I used to believe that too, back when I thought that the commandment that says not to take the Lord's name in vain was actually talking about speaking his name. And turns out, we learned in the Shepherd of Hermas that that's not what it means at all. To take the Lord's name in vain is to say, for instance, to say that you are a Christian, however, you don't follow the rules of Christ. You put a big Jesus piece on your chest as if you are a disciple, yet you don't obey none of the precepts in the Bible. That's what it means to take on his name in vain. And when we start to understand that and think back on who it was that told us that we're not supposed to be speaking his name or not even supposed to know his name, we kind of see where that all kind of comes from. So we have to understand that if it's written in the Bible, we obviously are supposed to know it. It's just a matter of getting these 4 letters right. And we've talked about this in other classes. These 4 letters, a lot of times you will hear people trying to pronounce this name and they will pronounce it with 2 syllables like in Yahweh, or 3 syllables like in Yahweh. This is actually a 4-syllable word. We can't have one H sound and then the other H is silent. That really doesn't make sense. So whatever his name is, however it is that we're supposed to pronounce this, would be a 4-syllable word. But the reason why we are struggling with this, I believe, is because, we've put our Father in a box. We've limited him to this single universe. Verse 10 says, if you look beyond definition, what do you see? Universe beyond universe. You see the many in one, or as the Greek philosophers would say, the enkon pan. So this explains why the book starts off this way, with the very first key explaining to us that we live in a many and one universe. And it also lends to the understanding of why there are so many other gods, or Elohim, talked about in the scripture. You have to remember that the first commandment back there in Exodus chapter 20 said that you will put no other God before me. Well, that lets us know that there are other gods. And what it is some of these gods are limited to this particular universe, whereas the Most High God, the ultimate creator, our Father in heaven, hallowed be his name, is at the center of all of these universes. Now, I don't plan on hitting every one of these verses. a lot of this book gets into the mathematics or the science behind a lot of this stuff, and I'm afraid many people, myself included, may not understand all of it. So I'm not going to try to bog myself down trying to explain it all. We do put up the read-alongs that if you wanted to get in depth into this, you can actually go to the source yourself and read the scripture. And if you do, find some understanding in those higher-minded verses, if you will, please share them with us in the comment section. It's great when you guys expound on some of these verses. It kind of helps the rest of us get an understanding in it. That's kind of why we're doing it like that. But anyway, let's look right here at verse 12. It says, by going into the splendor of the universes, you recognize a higher plan of creation that can be seen in this universe, in this level of creation. So when we expound our understanding that we live in a multi-universe, then, we get a better understanding of this particular universe. Verse 13 says, then you can understand that one must go beyond all theologies and all cosmologies which say that this is God here, only in this level of creation. Again, putting our Father in a box, limiting him and who he is and what he's capable of. Dropping down to verse 16, it says, he is beyond all universes, and yet all universes function collectively as the brain diagram of the higher order of creation. This is really easy to understand when you consider how our Father is infinite. And so he has been here from forever, even past forever. And so how long has he had to create this creation? How long has he had to build these universes that he's building? Well, that's an infinite amount of time, and you can imagine. And so to think that we are the only universe starts to seem a little bit absurd, especially when you think that, he will live forever. Our creator will live until eternity, but this universe will not. We can see how it's sometimes imploding on itself, and it's easy to understand how it's not going to last for forever. Well, we learned in this book that it is the dark matter that exists after this universe is destroyed that goes on to create the next universe, or the next universes, depending on how far into the future you look. Verse 17 is talking about how we continue to try to limit him. It says that we scandalize his name within our own laboratories of creation, basically trying to define who he is in our own terms. And we see a lot of this going on. That's why a lot of people want to reject these higher understandings. They've basically grasped their own understandings, doing their own studies. When they bother to turn off the TV for a minute and read some scripture, they gain a little bit of insight, but then they think that all they know is all there is to know. So then when they hear these higher level understandings, just like anything else that they don't understand, it tends to offend them, and so they start to get a little bit scandalous and doing like it says there in verse 17, start analyzing and scrutinizing him based on their own limited understanding. Verse 18 says, can this perceptual form of this planetary mind be so vain as to suppose that the universe does not exist beyond the scope of its own three-dimensional matter-energy body? So, like we said, I guess I need to find another word or another phrase to say. We're putting our Father in a box around our three-dimensional understanding. Some even painting him as a picture of us. We assume that he looks like us, and so we paint our Father in a portrait as if he's a humanoid and looks just like us. That's pretty vain. Verse 19 says, if the planetary mind cannot see the nature of God as the cosmos within the collective I am of its higher evolutionary body, how shall it determine its course through the heavens in order to behold and declare the true certain nature of life as recreated within the universe of living light? It goes on to say, the universe which surrounds us is full of love, powered emanations and love thresholds into which man, as son of man, will evolve as life begets life and eternal life. So this here is talking about our universe. And it says in verse 20, this shall be the communion of light, which shall evolve into the eternal body of light, known as the brotherhood of light. And this is kind of another way of talking about who we've always known as angels. Like we said in the last class, this book is going to define a lot of these spirits, or a lot of these entities in the spirit world, I should say. Whereas always we've called them angels. Well, we're going to get some definition on, or some clarity on their specific roles, their specific tasks, and who they are. And so we won't characterize them all as angels, going forward. Now, verse 21 is kind of rounding out that first key number 1. And then you see the second key is starting to be talked about here in verse 22. It says the second key is saying that the creative mind exists not only as Lord, Adonai, but as King, Melech, and as Redeemer, Messiah. This means that the mind itself does not have to become incarnate in order to act as king or redeemer. So now this is a really important concept to understand here, as we read along in this book, how it says this means that the mind itself does not have to become incarnate in order to act as king or redeemer. This is talking about our Father who is at the center of the universe. He does not have to put on a physical body himself in order to come down here. We think on the story of the Messiah. There's a lot of argument. Those in the know will say that the Messiah and the Father are one, they are the same. And then others who will point out and say, well, who was he praying to then when he was on the cross, saying, why have I forsaken thee? When you understand this right here in this verse, it makes sense. Even though the Father and the Messiah were one, you still had the mind at the center of the universe. It never had to leave, if that makes sense. Verse 23 may help us out. It says the mind can stay where it is and program the Redeemer, Messiah, into any teacher of light. And so this is what our Father does. He doesn't leave that place of which we can think of him as being the center of these universes. He doesn't have to materialize himself into this particular universe, leaving the other universes behind as he put himself into a body here. It says that he can program any being into this teacher of light. So he can take any person. So when you think about the Messiah and how it was after he got baptized, did the Spirit descend upon him like a dove? Well, this is what it's talking about here. He could do that from where he's at. And you can see there in verse 23 some of the other beings that this happened to. But then look at verse 24. It says the mind can stay where it is and program the Lord Adonai into many universes, into many galaxies, into many life stations. So when we come back up and we look at the key, it says the creative mind as the center of this universe is known as Lord, King, and Redeemer. Well, he's at the center, but he's programming these beings here on earth, similar to the way the Ophanim are programming the prophets. They're speaking through the prophets. Verse 25 speaks on these Ophanim. It says, King Melech is sovereign over all powers, principles, and galactic universes of the Ophanim, the Benai Elohim, and the Helios Kodesh that are beyond our level of intelligence. So now in this book, it's important to get the definitions of these words. So let's go over and let's see if we can find what this Benai Elohim is referring to. Okay, so we're looking over here at the glossary. It says the Benai Elohim, the sons of the creator gods, who dispatch judgment and hierarchical education in the absence of power in the lower heavens. These paradise sons work with the derivative systems of creation. They choose the selected seed, which is transplanted from the imperfect creation to levels of the divine invisible. And it's referenced in Job chapter 38, verse 7. So these here are talking about the Ophanim here, like we spoke about. We hear about the Ophanim as being the spirit behind the prophets, those who teach the prophets. The prophets were actually talking to these Ophanim. Now let's look up this other word, Heos HaKodesh. It says the highest servants of the Ancient of Days. These lords serve the Father's infinite plan of creation by working with his trinitized form of appearance. They are a non-evolving hierarchy. So like we said, in this book, we're going to get definitions of the angels. We've always called these beings angels, but here we're going to learn specifically some of their roles and, who they are and the differences between each and each. So let's just go on. Like you see there in verse 26, it says, the higher orders of intelligence understand that the Messiah is where the redemptive energies of the body of light are manifested. So this is the higher order of intelligences. And, this is really important to understand as we go through this book, is that this what we're learning is of a higher order of intelligence. So for those who want to keep themselves on the milk diet, maybe, only reading Psalms 23 or whatever, they're going to have a hard time understanding these higher levels of understanding. But the thing is, guys, we're living in the time in which we were promised that knowledge would increase. So if you have individuals that want to stay as milk babies, then to me, it doesn't seem really fair that they, want to hold everybody else back. It's like, they settled in with a third grade education and offended by anybody who wants to go to graduate school. Well, that's not really fair. And it's kind of dangerous if you think the time that we're living in and how the Illuminati is trying to keep everybody ignorant of these things so that they can have their way with them. So that's why the Third Testament says that those who would interfere with this higher level of intelligences are actually in servants of darkness. They're actually serving darkness. They may not be dark beings themselves, but they're actually doing the work of them. So let's go on. Verse 27 says, when they are manifested within you, you are a part of the collective Messiah. So you have these entities that are working with us anyway, but you also have people that are trying to block them out. And one of the most effective ways for them to block out our access to these higher intelligences is for us to forsake the law. When we start to abandon the law and get away from the Torah, that actually puts us in an unclean state where we have no access to these brothers of light. And the Illuminati, that's their plan, is to keep us away from these brothers of light so these entities of dark can have their way with us. So that's why it's important when we hear people trying to shut down this knowledge, is, we're going to have to find some way to shut them down instead. We're going to have to, quieten them up while they trying to shut us up. Somehow we're going to have to quieten them up, even if it's just only pushing that button to ignore that particular person, because they're quite destructive in this late in the game. Verse 27 goes on to say the collective Messiah unifies not only the 144,000 ascended masters that this physical universe is familiar with, but all physical universes that interpenetrate this physical plane and those beyond all other frequencies of light. So these are the entities behind the 144,000, these Ophanim, these B'nai Elohim, the Hayos HaKadesh. And so this is why it's important not to get caught up in these words. It's so bad when, some of these people get caught up in these words. Giving two examples. One was the pastor of my local church. When I gave her the Third Testament of the Bible, she could not make it past the first chapter of the Third Testament because of the word era, a three-letter word, E-R-A, era, which means times. She did not recognize that word, and so she essentially gave the book back, claiming that she didn't know what an era was. And so to her, the book was meaningless because she didn't understand that 3-letter word. And then another example, I had a minister from Colorado somewhere who heard me say the word Abba in a video, and he called and blessed me out. How could I use this word Abba, even using profanity, as he, how dare you use this word Abba, and not realizing that this word Abba is actually in the New Testament as well as the Old Testament. And so he actually embarrassed himself really, really bad, simply because he was unfamiliar with the word Abba. So when we hear these words and hear people speak on these words, we really need to be cautious, because they don't know what they're talking about, and we obviously don't know what we're talking about because we haven't studied on these words. But the thing about it, we have to realize where knowledge comes from. Satan is not even a real character, guys. He's not really real. It's not really a dude walking around creating all this havoc. This stuff is actually being created from ourselves. So if this is a entity within us that's causing us to do error, how can we attribute knowledge to him or wisdom to him, or say that he's created something or anything like that? No, we have to go back to the book of Proverbs and understand that all knowledge comes from our Father. All wisdom comes from our Father. It is just those people who are trying to trick us up that are using these words that we're unfamiliar with in order to do just that, to trick us up. But let's go on. Right there in verse 28, it says that it's important that we understand that our God is not of this 3 dimension. He's not limited to this universe. And then it has this word Adam Cadman in here. Let's look this one up, only because we see this word used so many times. It says the Adam Cadman, it says the light manifestation of paradise sons and lords of light who have evolved or been created beyond a body form as man knows it. The light body that has the ability to take on any form necessary to create and teach all manner of thinking creation, including superspecies creation, which exists as energy entities. The Adam Cadman is bestowed upon the light body, which becomes an extension of Yahweh. So hopefully you got more out of that definition than I did. Looking down here, and it says Adamic man, it says the exclusive manifestation of the Adam Cadman as a spiritual physical creation. So it's like this Adam Cadman is behind who we are, or something like that. Like I said, if you understand this, please put it down in the comment section. We see this term so many times in here. I think we're going to have to understand what this is, even though I'm having a bit of a hard time with it right now. I'm probably just overthinking it, so let's go on. Here's another term we can look up, though. Ahaya Asher Ahaya. Well, it's defined it there. It says the I am that I am, or the I shall be what I shall be, a constant evolving, a constant remaking of every order of creation. So you can see already that, we're going to get into some higher understandings here. Shame on those who would actually try to prevent us from understanding this. It kind of reminds me of school, where those who don't want to go on any higher try to prevent those who would. It says, if we are to participate in the ongoing biocosmic evolution of continuity and change within the creative continuum of the higher evolution, we must release ourselves from all vain endeavors in order to quicken the establishment of Yahweh is here. In other words, we have to stop putting him in a box. It says, this shall be the great and awe-inspiring Sabaoth of Adonai Tisbaoth, the Lord of armies. In verse 33 is saying, it is the creative fulfillment of our destiny. It is why we have been endowed with our many bodies of relativity, and it is why there is a fulfillment of prophecy within our day. We'll finish up with verse 34. It says, the fulfillment comes in the visitation and appearance of Merkabah, and in the invitation now being extended to our higher bodies of light synthesis to join in the communion of light set in honor of the Lords of light, who are to be heard and understood as the Lords Metatron, Melchizedek, and Maitreya. This is the Feast of Lights. This is the Brotherhood of Eternal Light. So You can imagine there's a lot going on here, and shame to say, but it's kind of like those that are lazy and don't want to spend their time trying to understand this, that are trying to convince the rest of us that we shouldn't. Thing about it, we're all going to have this Merkaba event. Let's look that up as the last thing we'll do, because there's plenty of people who are actually seeing this now. The glossary says, the Merkaba is divine light vehicle used by the masters to probe and reach the faithful in the many dimensions of the divine mind. So, like I said, there are people who are seeing this, but it is what they're seeing is the light. These beings, these vehicles, so to speak, are light vehicles, meaning that that's all that's to them is light. That's why when people try to zoom in and actually see what's there behind the light, there's nothing behind the light. This is a light vehicle. But the thing is, man, like I said, he wants to convince us or wants to keep us ignorant. So he's trying to convince us that these are alien spaceships or something like that, and trying to make us fearful of these. These are actually what's described over in Ezekiel chapter 1. As the wheels within the wheels, it says the Merkaba can take on many forms of a brilliant violet in the physical worlds. So what these people are seeing is these Merkabas, these light vehicles. So this is important why we have to educate ourselves and get into the know. And in all of the scripture, guys, that I've read, at least, and I believe I've read a large bit of it. This is the only book that describes what this Merkaba is. And this is why they want to keep this book from us. This is why they want to keep this knowledge from us, so that they can claim that they're aliens. They can say that they're aliens and that, we should be scared of them. And the only way they can do so is if they keep us ignorant as to what they actually are. And so we'll cover more on it in the next video in this series. So make sure you subscribe so you can see when them videos come out. Go ahead and hit the like button, and please leave a comment. Help me out, guys, with some of this stuff. I'm having trouble with it, as you can see, but we can all work together, compare our knowledge. Maybe we can get some understanding of all of this. So I'll see you in the comment section. Hey y'all, Coach in the Fight here, looking still. Hey y'all, Coach in the Fight. You got Stacy and Chris with me.
Hey y'all.
Hey,
Chris, if you don't mind, will you pull up key 319 right there? Oops. Well, pull up 319. And because this right here, somebody asked about the 64th key. And so what we're going to do is look at the last key, because this book claims that there's 64 keys. And so if it's not the last key in the book, it's not in the book, right, Chris?
Right.
So the least we could do is just look at a few verses from the 64th key. Now I got some highlighted from before. We'll just look at those. You looking at the comments, Stacey? What you got down there? You just reading them? Any new ones? We got Servant 49. Shalom, peace be with you all. And Dahl says, thank you for covering the 64 key. Well, we're going to cover a few verses out of here. You got it so they can see it?
Yes, sir.
All right, so Stacey, if you don't mind, matter of fact, this is the last key. I'll let you read it. The title of it, this is key 319, and it's the title of it, or the key is God loves his people. You know how it has the key and then it breaks down the key?
Yeah.
Well, this is the smallest one, I believe. It says God loves his people, Israel.
Okay.
So now let's see what it's talking about here in verse 1.
Okay, verse 1. God loves his people Israel, and because he loves them, he has promised the ascension to them from the world of physical limitation and negation, so that they can be like the brothers and masters of light.
In other words, he's talking about the change, the twinkling of an eye change that we read about when humanity changes. He's saying that he's going to end the physical limitations that we have now, where we're barely able to feed ourselves, we're barely able to keep ourselves clothed and protected. He's going to take those physical limitations make them minuscule to us to where we can think on a higher level, closer to these higher brothers of light in the way they think. In other words, we become spiritualized.
All right.
Throughout our present redemptive age, the spiritual Israel, exemplified through the work of Enoch, Elijah, and the Messiah, proved that physical ascension is possible in this dimension of reality for all the world to experience.
Yeah. So you have those individuals that was translated, right? And let me look at that a little closer. Throughout the present redemptive age, the spiritual Israel, exemplified through the work of Enoch, Elijah, and the Messiah. So those were the examples.
Right.
Number 3.
The ascension begins with the program being offered up to the heavenly Jerusalem, a threshold which is used to accommodate transitions from the planetary basis of the material worlds into the complex structure of the cosmos.
In other words, he's talking about the change that the world is going to go through. He's making a connection between humanity and how humanity will change, but it's going to change along with the world as we go through these physical changes that we're expecting. When we start to see and or hear these trumpets of Revelation chapter 8 sound. This is what's going to be the main part of the ascension. The ascension begins when the program begins to be offered up. And the program that he's talking about is us. Us as this program where we were put down here as part of our training to become gods, to become, to go to these higher mansions, which has been part of this program. Well, part of the program is a change, a switch, a jolt in humanity, where we go from this kind of worldly mindset where we focus on food, clothing, and shelter. We go through a jolt in humanity where we're more focused on higher-minded things like healing, our Father and what He has for us individually and humanity as a whole. But my point is that that's where it starts. What's the next verse say?
Number 4. The sequence of events begins with the grids of the world shifting to a new position and the chambers of the earth opening to reveal the sacred tablets of the brotherhoods of light.
The pole shift. This is the physical pole shift. We hear of all, everybody's talking about solar flares and the geomagnetic pole shift and how, the poles could shift from where they're at now to over in Siberia or somewhere, but there's a subsequent earthquake that goes with it. And that is what he's talking about here. When these grids are realigned, the grids of the earth, or the nodes of the earth, are realigned based on the new crystalline structure that will be created after the global earthquake. That's, he says, is tied to the ascension, right? That's when the ascension begins. That's why I tell people, people get on and say, oh, I can't wait for that day. I can't wait for that day. You need to wait for that day because it's going to be bad. It's the badness that makes us want to be good. It's the level of, it's the things that happen to us that push us to wanting to change who we are as a humanity. So you can imagine how
it gets so bad that we'll be forced to change.
Yeah, and so you can imagine how stressful that will be when all of humanity will want to change. Everybody. Now, let's go to, let's skip over a few verses. Let's look at verse 9. I had that one highlighted. 9 through 11. Seems like some type of prayer. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Number 9. May the granite plug in the grotto of the pyramid be removed by the vibrations of Laosh Gebnut, so that the vibratory geometrics of the present program of creations and the masters who failed their mission no longer be kept within the structure of the pyramid, but released for man to understand.
Yeah, I remember this now. What he's talking about is how the pyramids play a part in the alignments. The pyramid over in Giza that is actually aligned to our current grid pattern. And it is when that pyramid and the stars align that we can start to expect this new shift, this new grid pattern, where we're basically going to need a whole nother pyramid. The pyramid that we have over there will be defunct if it's not already. And with a new grid pattern, we'll need a new, we'll be in what is called New Jerusalem, the new time, the new era, the Aquarian age. And so that's what he's saying here. Let that gratis plug over there in the pyramid be aligned so that this can happen. Is basically saying Maranatha. That's what he's saying.
May the sacred vibrations reopen the chamber of initiation so that light is poured out into all 12 sacred areas of the planet that are connected with the Great Pyramid.
Yeah, see, he's talking about these vibrations that have been kind of restrained, for lack of a better word, in humanity. At one point, we were able to self-govern. We didn't need laws, and we didn't even need Moses or anybody. Humans were able to self-govern. But these vibrations, through our materialism and other sins, those vibrations have been quiet and sitting down now to where we can't hear them. And we need schools, we need churches, we need jails and prisons and all of that stuff to control humanity. He's saying, let those vibrations come back so that humanity can once again survive under our own conscience and under our own will, except this time not being error prone and making mistakes.
And may the sacred name of Christos allow the mouths of the initiates to receive the initial impulse to speak the sacred language. For only through the Christos can the faithful understand the anointing of revealed eternity through baptism into the light which is eternal.
In other words, he's saying that those who are here supposed to be carrying the light, these brothers of the light, have on their tongues the words of our Messiah and how we are supposed to be washed in the blood of the Lamb. Some of these guys watching this video on second Passover now getting their garments refreshed and cleaned up. But that's what he's saying. This is the main mission of these brothers of light, these people who are sent here to catch these open nations and share them to the rest of the world. Even those who are just laborers carrying the word of God have the mission of telling people how our Messiah died for our sins. How is that blood washing us clean? And it's through Passover, and it's through the communion, and it's through his feast days, and it's through obedience to his law. He's saying let those people talk that, let that be on their mouths. I think there was one more verse I wanted to talk in here, and that's verse 29. That's good. 29. And then we'll close this video out unless you got any more comments to talk about.
29. And through this new alignment, Metatron showed me how man could recreate crystalline correspondences between biophysical and geophysical grid structures that could amplify signals for prayer and healing by the faithful.
In other words, he's telling us through this book. Of course, this is a long book, and you're looking at the last chapter. You've missed all of the explanation. But he's saying how he sees these people healing on a molecular level. And with that, I tell you guys, you need to start practicing your healing. You do have the power. You do have the power. I would dare say all of you do have the power to heal. You just need to express it, And so when somebody's sneezing, somebody complaining that their head is hurting, their knee is hurting, anything, take that opportunity to build your confidence that you have the ability to heal them, and just go lay hands on them and pray for them and watch them be healed. And then use that, because that prayer and healing is what we are supposed to be here to do. That's our jobs as the children of light, prayer and healing. All right. And with that, we're going to go ahead and close this video out. I want to thank all of you guys that are supporting this channel. We really appreciate all that you do. And for you guys that are over there purchasing the clock, looking at the channel, inthefight.shop, checking out the celestial calendar and all of that, getting all of the free stuff. We appreciate all your feedback that you're giving, and those that decide to actually purchase a clock. We appreciate you guys doing that too. And I believe that's going to be it.
Yep. We'll see you guys in the next video. And thank you again for all your support.
May our Father bless you and keep you. May Make his face shine upon you and give you peace.